G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Thanks for joining us, Tamika. I really appreciate you making the time. As a starting point, could you give me a brief introduction into who you are and what you do?
Sure. So obviously my name's Tamika. I'm a specialist construction and trades coach. So I guess what you would say that I actually do is I mentor and coach trades into how to build a business, I guess, that works for them, and increasing their profits and clawing back time. So they're obviously the main things that I do. So lots of strategies around that.
And I know one of the areas that you particularly specialize in is that sales process. And we've had a number of good conversations around that, which has been super helpful. Certainly from my perspective, I see the sales process as being an area that's often lacking within a business.
Yeah.
And again, we've had a number of discussions around this, that some people can put a lot of emphasis around their marketing and generating lots of leads, but it doesn't matter how many leads you bring to the door. If you can't close them through a good sales process, then you're wasting a lot of time and money. So tell me a bit about, I guess, your perspective on the sales process and where you've worked with clients in the past around improving their sales process and what sort of results they might get from that.
Perfect. So first and foremost, the sales in a business are the business's oxygen. So if you have no sales in your business, you've got no business. So a lot of people tend to spend a lot of time in, people management, in marketing, as you said, which is all very important. But as you said, if you can't close the sale, then you have no business. So I think one of the big things that even in particular in trades and construction, there's not enough emphasis put on that. In today's, the way that the climate is at the moment, and it goes in, ebbs and flows, is it's quite easy to get a job in construction. So, a lot of the time jobs will land in your lap. But it hasn't always been like that, and it won't always be like that. So having a clear sales process and being really good at sales is what's going to save your business over the next few years. So as an example, I had a client come to me a few years back, and this is a bit of an interesting one. So really good builders, they had an amazing product, but what they found is that they were just continually competing on price, and they were being beaten usually by the crappiest builder. So once we worked together and we worked out their selling points, so you need to have something that differentiates you from any other tradesperson, business, builder. Until you have that, you're always going to be competing on price. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
So we devised what makes them different to any other builder. So I'm not talking about, a lot of builders will say, we do quality work. Well, so does every other builder. That's their sales spiel. So we differentiate, we determined what differentiated them from anyone else. And then we looked at their entire sales process from start to finish. So what that looked like from, the client first coming in the door, we devised a script for them that enabled them to really determine what was most important to the client. Then you know what you're dealing with. So not all clients are interested in price. And to basically in sales, there's so many touch points you need before a client will make a decision. So we do what's called hooking the client into the sale. And that is quite strategic. So the point that we got to was, as an example, in that price doesn't always matter. This client had a $1.2 million bill that they were quoting on. And they took the client through the entire sales process, which also made the client feel really safe, because within the sales process, we actually are telling the clients what's going to happen at the next step. So they know exactly what's going on and what's expected. So if you can do that within your business, you're immediately placed in the top 1 or 2% of the people that they're dealing with. Does that make sense? Just on professionalism alone.
Yeah. So this might sound like a dumb question, but how does a business know if they've got a sales process?
Well, they would know if they have one. So at the end of the day, basically a sales process is something that if I came into the business and you said to me, I want you to be a salesperson for a week or 2 weeks, you would have a clear process and a clear step-by-step guide as to what's said at each step of the way. That's the sales process.
Okay.
What documentation is sent to the client, what that looks like, what we say in our emails, that is a full sales process.
So it's around having some clear steps that you're taking a customer through, or
on a journey,
prospective customer through.
Yeah.
And it's about having some supporting materials and I'm assuming, perhaps some techniques or some training around what, maybe scripting is another way to put it, around the sort of discussions we're going to have in each step of the process.
Absolutely. And that also is, to a degree, then communicated to the client.
Okay.
To a degree. So the client needs to know in our first meeting, this is what we expect from you, and this is what we're going to do in that meeting. And then we've got the next meeting outlined in like a flow chart. The client gets a copy of the flow chart. This is what's going to happen at this step, and this is the next step. The next step is, for example, I'm going to get you to sign a contract. What do we do? What do you do? So what happened with this client that was quoting on the $1.2 million build? They took the client on the journey, educated them throughout the whole process, ensured that the clients were not. So what tends to happen in sales as well is the clients run the show. But whereas I teach my clients to control the process in a nice way. So what that means is that you're going to close the deal quicker because it's according to your timeline, not the client's timeline. And you're telling them what's going to happen and when it's going to happen.
Okay.
So clients are stoked with that. So what happened with this $1.2 million build was that literally my clients went through from the first conversation, took them through the entire process and won that build when they were $200,000 over the other builder.
Yeah, wow. $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a big price difference. And
because the clients felt comfortable, price wasn't their driving factor.
Yeah.
They felt comfortable with the builder. They knew that they had systems in place. That all forms part of the process.
Mm. So tell me, what do you do when you're working with a client to help them build a sales process? What are the steps that you go through with the client?
The very first thing that we need to come up with is a sales qualification script. So we don't want to. So this is a technique that will save the business so much time and money. Like, for example, if you're a builder, and I say builders because I deal with a lot of builders, they will literally get a client ring up, hey mate, looking at building a house, this is my block. Cool, all right, I'll come and have a look. So what that means is they're spending time out of the business. They don't know it, and that's literally usually the extent of the conversation.
Yeah, wow.
Plumbers the same, electricians the same. So they'll go and do a site visit, more time out of the business. Then they'll say, I'll do you a quote. Quoting takes hours, so sometimes days. they'll do the quote without knowing even who that client is, how serious they are, if they've dealt with an electrician before or a builder or whoever. And so once we get the script sorted, the very first questionnaire that the client has to complete before you even go to that next step, we've already got a clear picture of who they are, when they want to start work, what are they most interested in their tradesperson or business. So we know what their fears are, so we can help to alleviate those fears. We're sending them documentation after that first call. So just that alone will prove to be a huge difference in your business.
Yeah, okay. That sounds like a fantastic first step.
I'll give you another example, Rob. So I've got one of my architectural firms. They had a client, because again they didn't have a qualification process. They had a client that they did a quote for, and the client actually said to them, "Are you sure this is correct?" And the client's like, "Yeah." Well, my client's like, "Yeah." And she said, "You're too cheap. Do it again. I'm not going with you until you raise your price."
Wow. That's a conversation you want to be having.
Yeah. So she assumed automatically that this client was after a dollar amount when she wasn't.
Mm.
And so one of the questions that needs to be asked too, Rob, so when, I don't know, so in construction or with a build, we need to know the client's budget. That is first and foremost one of the biggest things that you need to learn. But we don't say it in a way that's confrontational. So we don't say, "What's your budget?" Which is what's your budget, mate? No, it's, what are you looking to invest in your project?
Yeah. And I guess that comes back to that comment you made before when you're going through a qualification. It's about understanding what's important to the client. And I guess that comes down to the budget as well, and working. It
does. So if a
client
says, say your services are valued at, I don't know, 10, 15,000, and the client says to you, "What are you looking to," we say to the client, "What are you looking to invest?" And they say $2,000. They've immediately disqualified themselves.
Yep.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com.
So it sounds like a lot of the initial work you're doing is helping your clients work out how to weed out the tire kickers, so they're not spending time on a sales process with a client that's not going to proceed.
Eventually, yeah, absolutely. And you can determine that a lot of the time, probably 70% of the time, from that first conversation.
So the first conversation can be really powerful if you're using that as a qualification to see whether they're the right client to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And are there any other, I guess, particular parts of the sales process where you feel clients who work with you can get big gains?
Is in the sales process?
Yeah. Is there anything else in the sales process? So you've talked about the qualification stage.
Yeah. So I get most of my clients will charge to quote. So that's another, because you've got, especially in construction, you've got so many steps within the sales process, because it is a long journey in construction. And even in any trade, getting paid for a site visit, that's instantly like a lot of money over the lifetime of their business that they didn't have before. Yeah. If a client won't pay that certain fee, which is called a tripwire, at a certain point in the sales process, then again they disqualify themselves.
Okay. And I guess construction and trades, perhaps somewhat unique in the amount of work that goes into generating a quote. So obviously that's not going to work in every industry, but
No.
again, I think the common theme there is working out who are the clients that you want to be working with and having a process to count them in or out.
Yes.
And certainly if you've got a lengthy sales process, including developing up quotes, then potentially putting some sort of charge in there at some point to work out who's serious and who's not can be a big win.
The other big thing too, Rob, and it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, if you can have this clear sales process, you can actually employ someone to do the role rather than you physically having to do it yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't have that clear process, it's all in your own head.
Yeah, and I think that's another really important thing to consider. And we see it a lot in small businesses that struggle to scale because the business owner is the only person who's really doing the selling.
Yes.
And therefore, you've always got a bottleneck in that sales process in terms of the number of clients that you can get through because only the owner is doing the selling. Whereas if you can turn that into a process that anyone can do, all of a sudden you can scale your sales team and grow your business far more effectively.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that comes down to just being really clear what that looks like for each business, what that first conversation looks like. So that's I guess one of the things that makes an immediate impact is generally that's what happens is that one person in the business knows all of that stuff. So even just by taking the first phone conversation away from whoever that person is and getting, someone in the office to do it, that's already freed up a heap of time.
Yeah, that's right. Really good point. So I guess a couple of the key takeaways I'm getting from this conversation is, first of all, that whatever business you're in, you should have some sort of sales process to convert your marketing leads into a paying customer.
Absolutely.
I guess the other big thing I'm taking away from you is the importance of that qualification process, making sure you're talking to the right clients who are actually serious.
Yes.
And I really liked, I guess, thinking around, I think the phrase you used was tripwires in terms of if you've got, particularly if it's a long sales process, having a couple of points along the journey where the clients actually have to commit or get off the bus and get out of the way. So we can start dealing with other clients and I guess having some sort of charge in there is a pretty good way to work out whether they're serious or not.
Yeah. And also, Rob, one big thing, which I touched on before, is making sure that the ball is always in your court. So what that means is, for example, and this is getting into more sales techniques, but if a client says to you, look, I'll go away and have a think about it, which generally means that you haven't assessed their needs well enough and their fears and what they're exactly what they're after. If you can do that, clients will just want to go with you. But if they say, for example, look, give me a couple of days to think about it, what tends to happen is we don't have a follow-up process. We leave it in, let the clients come back to us. But a simple technique to use is, say to them, hey, that's awesome. Yeah, no worries. Would you mind if I gave you a call in a couple of days' time if I haven't heard from you, just so that I can see if you've got any questions? So the ball is back in your court.
Yeah. And you're keeping control as to when the next step happens and not leaving it in the arms of the client to make their own decisions around
and not
time.
Knowing again at that point. So we've made that appointment time. Okay, cool. I'll give you a call at 11 o'clock. Is that okay? Asking their permission.
Yeah.
Then you either continue on with the sales process or it's done. It's finished.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Okay. So what's one thing you would recommend to a small business owner that they could do on Monday around developing their sales process?
Yeah. So the very first thing is get that qualification script. So in saying that, they're like, well, what are we asking? So give me an example of someone that would come to you guys, Rob. What sort of industry?
Okay. So I was working with a tourism business the other day. I hope this isn't too far off the mark for you.
Who do they sell to?
So they largely sell to cruise clients that that come into the state, and they sell experiences.
Cool, excellent. So what they need to determine first and foremost is what differentiates them to any other tourism business in the state.
Yeah.
So because otherwise, again, they're going to be competing on price all the time. It's going to be always down to the bottom dollar. So they need to come up with something really compelling. So, and the way that you come up with that is determining what are the clients fearing. When a client comes, a cruise client comes to, a tourism business and they're offered these experiences, what are some of the main pitfalls or fears that can occur that they can alleviate?
Because I guess if they're about to spend a couple of $100 on an experience, they want to make sure that, I'm only here for 2 days. I want to invest my time and money in something that's going to be a great experience and not...
It needs to be a no-brainer.
Yeah, okay.
So that's one thing that they need to determine. But again, on that sales script that they need to come up with, what's the most important thing you're looking for when you're looking, what would you call it, an experience? What are they after?
Yeah. Yeah.
What exactly are you after?
And by asking that question straight away, you can work out if you're talking to a client that's going to be a good fit, or if you're barking up the wrong tree and you're better off pointing them in the direction of something else that's going to suit their needs, and spending your time on a client that's more likely to say yes.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is, have you dealt with, a tourism business before? If so, can you tell me your experience?
Yeah,
so what they might say is, oh God, it was horrendous. I hated it. I wish that this, and this happened. So then the tourism business will say, I'm really sorry to hear that, which is why we offer this guarantee to alleviate this, and this happening.
Yeah.
So immediately the client is feeling safe.
Yeah, taking away some of those fears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And then of course, so these are the three main things that need to be in that script. And of course is, how much are you looking to invest in your adventure?
Yep.
And then you can offer them upsells like KFC.
Yeah. Very good point. Excellent. All right. Well, that's great. Thanks so much, Tamika.
Oh, no worries.
Really appreciate your time.
Been fun. Thanks, Rob.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc., so more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.